Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ben here. I'm back again today doing another video. Subject of today's video is going to be on the 2007 NBA draft. I'm going to be doing a redraft. As you can see here, I have the mock draft up from ESPN.com, and there's some weird little bug here where I think because this draft machine is so old that they don't have the proper spot open here for number 2. But just know that that was the Sonics pick, Seattle, and what would become the Oklahoma City Thunder. And so today I'm just going to be going through and saying, like, if we knew what we know now, how would these teams draft? And so I'll be going through, I think I'm just going to do the top 15 picks, um, and I'll just drag the guys over and we will go from there. So, first pick, Portland. Let's see, what was their team makeup right at this point in time? They had basically, you had Brandon Roy and you had LaMarcus Aldridge as your pieces, and so they said, well, at center we don't really have much going on, so we'll take the consensus number 1 guy, Greg Oden. But the number 2 in this draft was Durant, and considering that I don't actually even remember if they had Batum at this point yet, but either way, they could definitely use Durant. He would be better than any option they currently have, and he wouldn't really overlap with anybody. So I'm going to say Kevin Durant becomes number 1 overall pick to Portland. Number 2 pick, Seattle. Let's see here. At this time, they had. This is right before they traded Ray Allen, but they did trade him on draft night for Boston's pick. So let's just say that this pick for Seattle, they really had nothing on this team at this point. Durant was kind of what started this new foundation because they traded away both Rashard Lewis and um, and they had traded away uh, Ray Allen during this offseason. So they were basically starting all over. So I think they just take the best player available at this point. And so I'm going to say in this draft, the next best available player for them, um, I think for me, it's going to be between Al Horford and Marc Gasol. I'm going to say they go with Al Horford just because he would have been in the U.S. immediately. He wouldn't have needed to wait at all. And again, it's not showing up here, but just know that this is going to be Al Horford because there's some weird glitch. Atlanta, they were a team that at the time had Josh Smith. They had Joe Johnson. I believe they signed Mike Bibby in the offseason, so they had the makings, and they had Marvin Williams. So what they really needed at the time was a center. So that's why they originally had picked Al Horford. But I think that they still would need a center, and I think that they would have been turned off by Marc Gasol being overseas for a while. So I think that they would have gone with Joakim Noah. He could have slotted in for center for them. Al Horford's Florida teammate. Um, very good defensively, and that's really what they needed too, is a good defensive presence to complement Josh Smith down low, because that would be a very formidable 1-2 punch as far as interior defense. Josh Smith and then Joakim Noah. Memphis here, let's see here, they had at this time. They had Pau Gasol still. He was going to be traded soon, but they still had him at this point. They had who else did they have? They had Rudy Gay at this point. They had Darrell Arthur, I believe. He was like a power forward for them. But yeah, not very much. They basically had Rudy Gay and Pau Gasol and not much else. They originally took Mike Conley. I'm going to say they go with Mike Conley again, actually. Yeah, I think they still needed a point guard. They didn't really need a center because they had Gasol. I was debating giving them actually the other Gasol brother here, but I don't think that they would go with that. So yeah, I'm going to say they still need a point guard, so they still go with Conley. A guy who can give you a little bit of everything on offense, pretty good perimeter defender as well, and he fills in that point guard void that they had at the time. Boston at number 5. I'm going to essentially just say that this is Seattle's pick because they did very shortly after trade the pick to Seattle. I'm going to say here's where we have Marc Gasol come in. Marc Gasol, a guy who really, the best years of his career were probably like between 2012 to 2017. So he didn't hit his like most prime years for a while after he was drafted. I believe he waited this year and the next year, and then in 2009 to 10, that was his first season in the NBA. So there's a little bit of a delay with him coming in. But yeah, I'm going to say that Marc Gasol would be the fifth overall pick here, and he would essentially be the running mate of Al Horford in Seattle then. So they'd have a really good front line of eventually down the line they would have had, I know you can't see the pick here, but Al Horford and Marc Gasol as the two cornerstones of their front court. Next, we have Milwaukee, and I'd say here is where this draft really starts to fall off as far as talent on the board. There's still talented pieces on teams around, but I think overall it starts to drop off. I believe at this point, Milwaukee had a core of like Andrew Bogut, Michael Redd. Um, they still had, I believe, yeah, at this point they still had Mo Williams. So what they were really looking for was like a small forward and a power forward. Um, and so if I were them, I'd definitely take Jeff Green. He could give them some scoring too. I think that was a real struggle for them is finding scoring, and he was essentially like a tweener between a power forward and a small forward, and he could score like 16 points a night for you even as a young player. So I think Jeff Green makes the most sense for them. Minnesota at the time they were about to trade for Garnett or trade Garnett for Al Jefferson. So their team was consisting of what they were really looking for. Let's see here. They had uh basically Randy Foye was like the best player on the team at the time, and he was coming off of his rookie season. Besides that, they basically had nothing. So I think that it's pretty wide open as far as who they would have drafted. Originally, they took Corey Brewer. I think this time they would take, I guess I'll say Thad Young, and he would pair with um, Al Jefferson in the post. Pretty good Swiss Army knife kind of guy where he can do a little bit of everything, and on a bad offensive team, he can score like 15 points a night. Charlotte, I don't remember exactly what their team situation was at this point. They they had just traded for Jason Richardson. Um, I think I think this team would have gone with, let's see here. They had Emeka Okafor at the time, so I don't think they would have gone with the center. I'm gonna say Rodney Stuckey, easy enough to just be kind of like a sixth man for them. I think is what he would have fulfilled. He originally went to Detroit at 15, but I think he's the next best player available, so they would have gone with him. Next, we have Chicago, who I believe originally took. Let me think here who they originally took. Oh man, I can't even remember at this point, but I think considering who's still available, what their team was looking for, they had Kirk Heinrich, they had Luol Deng, they originally took Joakim Noah, so they had Tyrese Thomas, so they were looking for like probably a shooting guard or a center, and I think with that in mind, I think the next best player I'm gonna say in my book would have been Nick Young. Um, yeah, they needed a shooting guard, and I think it's just as simple as that. Sacramento, let's see, who could they have used? Oh man, this Sacramento team was like right when they were starting to become really bad again. They had been out of the playoffs the last year. They still had Ron Artest. They still had John Salmons. They still had. That's actually really who they had. That was like the core of their team. Those two guys. So they could have really used any other position. I guess I'll say they go with. I'll say that they go with Big Baby. I think he would have been a nice addition down low for them. A guy who, with extended minutes, became a bit of a better player than what people may have thought he was. Um, I think that he was a guy who, in his best year, he scored 15 points and like 8 rebounds. And that was like the only year he got like starters minutes in the league. So I think he could have been around that for most of his career if he would have got more like starters minutes more consistently. Atlanta, so in this scenario, they take Joakim Noah. They've probably then got a core of Noah, Josh Smith, Joe Johnson. I think what they could really use is a wing here, and so I'm going to say Corey Brewer goes to them at 11. I actually don't remember who they originally took here. Yeah, I'm not sure. Looking over this list here, but yeah, Corey Brewer could have filled in as their like a backup small forward or shooting guard for them to Marvin Williams and Joe Johnson. So Corey Brewer. Philly at 12 originally took Thad Young here. I'm going to say that they go with Carl Landry, a guy who, you know, you're probably never going to think about him much after his career's done, but he had a year for, I believe, the Warriors, or it was New Orleans, one of the two, I can't remember, around 2012, where he had a season where he was putting up like 16 and 10, and similar to Big Baby, it was like the one year in his career where he actually got like starters minutes. So I think, if Carl Landry, excuse me, would have played more significant minutes throughout his career, he would have been much more productive. But he just was this kind of guy where people on any team he was on, that he was always getting played like 16 to 18 minutes a night, so he just never really got his shot. By the way, I'm only going to go through 15 just so you're aware. I think that like once you get past that, there's not much of a point in continuing to go through these because they just become guys that don't really have much impact. Next, New Orleans, I'm going to go with Aaron Aflalo, a guy who was actually very good at scoring for certain stretches of his career. Like he had a couple of seasons where he put up like between 15 to 18 points per game. I want to say it was between like 2012 and 2015 was that time frame. So Aaron Aflalo, another guy who, he's out of the league now. He had like a relatively short effective career. If you think about it, he was basically done in the league by about 2017. That's only 10 years, but he had a few years where he was definitely an above average talent for sure. Clippers at this point, they had, I believe, they didn't even have Eric Gordon yet. They were coming off of a season where they still had Elton Brand, they still had Corey Maggette. I believe they had missed the playoffs this year, but they were still looking okay. They had Chris Kaman too, I believe. So I think that they'd be looking for like a point guard or a wing. I'll say they go with Aaron Brooks, who was a former Most Improved Player of the Year. If you don't remember that, Aaron Brooks indeed was. So I think that point guard was an area that they could have used a little bit of help in. I think they maybe had Sam Cassell at this point, but he was kind of on the way out and really old at this point. So I'll go with Aaron Brooks. And then the last pick, Detroit. They were coming off of a trip to the Eastern Conference Finals. I think that they were still a pretty good team. This isn't their actual pick. I think they had traded for this pick. So I'll say, they at this point had basically every position. They had an above average player besides center, so I'll say that they take the best center on the board and they go with Spencer Hawes. There you have it, guys. It's weird to go back and do these redrafts because there are a lot of guys that turn out to be like very average role players in the NBA, or if they were good, they were good for a short stint of time, like Rodney Stuckey or Nick Young or Glenn Davis. Lots of guys who kind of had like one peak season too, where they looked really good, and then they fell back down to earth. Like at the end here, Carl Landry, Aaron Aflalo, Aaron Brooks, all like one hit wonders, like one great season. And there's still talent on the board here, like there's still effective NBA players like Jared Dudley, Ramon Sessions, Wilson Chandler, Tiago Splitter, guys that put in some okay seasons. But there you have it, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you found this interesting, and I might keep doing some more. They seem like kind of a fun thing to do. So see you guys next time. Bye.